Right, here we have an example of division which will involve giving us a remainder at the end. So our first one, as you can see, is 397 divided by 3. So putting that in the short division method, the 3 goes to the front. That's telling us what we're splitting it up into groups of 3. The 397 go beneath the new division symbol. Okay, so the division symbol has moved to that. So we use the same ideas as we had in the last assignment's processes. How many groups of 3 can we have in 3? Well, we have a group of 3 here, and there would only be the one group, so that one goes there. How many groups of 3 would there be in the 9? Well, just to illustrate that, I've got the 9 dots, and we would then end up with 3 groups. So there are 3 groups of 3 in the 9. But how many groups of 3 would there be in 7? Well, as you can see, I've got my 7 dots. I've got one group of 3. I've got another group of 3. But then I have 1 left over. So I'm going to put my 2 groups here because that's what I have. So what do I do with the 1 left over? Well, the 1 left over becomes a remainder. Okay, so to show that it's a leftover, a remainder, we put an R, and that means remainder. And then we put the 1 remainder just there. And that gives you the completed calculation. 132 remainder the 1. Now, a common misconception occurs with children aged between in years 3 and 4 is that from now on all remainders are 1 because you have one group left over. Now, what I always then try to highlight is the fact that remainders will not always be 1. They can be a wide variety of remainders left over. It just depends on what you're dividing by. So here we've got the 3. How many groups of 3 go into 6? We've got 2. How many groups of 3 go into 9? We've got 3. How many groups of 3 go into 5? Well, just using the dots again underneath, here's my 5. I've got one group of 3, so I'm going to put 1 here. But how many do I have left over? Well, I've got 1, 2. So on this occasion, my remainder would be 2 and not 1, thus showing that it does change at the end of your number sentence. Here is a further example. Here we have how many groups of 3 go into 3. It's just the 1 again. How many groups of 3 do we have in nothing? Well, in 0. If you remember, when you have nothing, there's nothing to divide up, nothing to share. So because of that, you have no groups. And then finally, how many groups of 3 go into 8? Well, if you start writing down your 3 times table, that will start to show you how many groups you have without having to do the dots. So you have 3, 6, and when you get to 9, that's too many. You've gone past 8. So that shows you have 2 groups. The difference between 6 and 8 is 2, which means you have a remainder of 2. So to show that using the dots, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here I have one group of 3, and here I have another group of 3. And you can see I've then got the 2 groups, and underneath here I have the 2 remainders, the 2 dots. So if you're ready to move away from the dots, then you can start thinking about using your times tables in steps, in chronological steps, to start finding the difference and start finding how many groups are in your numbers. Now this final example just repeats the point that the remainder isn't always 1 and that it can be other amounts. Here we're dealing with a different number, as I've used 3 quite a lot. And here we have how many groups of 5 can we find in 5? Well, that's going to be quite straightforward. There is only the one group. Here we have 0, so there will be 0 groups to find because there is nothing. And then that's repeated with the next one. So don't ever worry if you have something like this because it's okay. There are no groups there. Don't feel like you have to put a number in at that point. Finally, we have how many groups of 5 will go into the 9. Well, if you think about it, you can fit one group of 5 in because if you go up in steps of 5, 5, 10, 10 becomes too big, so you can't put that in. So that means you've only got the one group there. But how many do you have left over as a remainder? Well, if you do have your 9 dots there and you circle off your group of 5, you will find that you have 4 left over, and that shows you have a remainder 4. So just remember, when you're dealing with these calculations, the answer will always be smaller than the original number you started with, and the remainder can be different. You're not dealing with one group at the end, you're showing how many you have left over.